If you're like me and have found this pandemic and its many, many lockdowns to be the perfect time to dive headfirst into film photography, or maybe you've been shooting film since before it was cool, back when freedom was legal, you've probably explored the multitude of ways to convert your analog shots to digital. Having extensively tested the flatbed method to a frustrating and fruitless end, I was keen to switch to the camera plus macro lens method that's been recommended to me by so many photographers, both on and off of the podcast. After scouring the market, I discovered a fantastic, multi-format, high-quality, cost-effective solution for securing my film and diffusing the light underneath it, allowing me to photograph it effectively. Its frame, range of interchangeable gates, and light diffuser make it possible to digitally photograph your film quickly and, most importantly to me, to a high standard. It allows you to scan 35mm, 120, and even 4x5. Visit pixel-later.com, that's pixl-latr.com to find out more and get your own. Also check them out on Instagram, tell them that I sent you, and a massive thanks to Pixelator for supporting the podcast. It's always exciting. I think I'm adding a new country. I might be upsetting someone who's previously been on the podcast, but I believe this is the podcast's first trip to Norway, which I'm quite excited about. It seems like one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and when we're allowed on planes, I'm going to have to make my way over there. Let's start off with why it is that you first picked up a camera. What made you want to get into photography in the first place?
Well, 8 years ago when I was pregnant, I got a crazy idea to become a professional photographer for just one day. I wanted to photograph my child at his first days, his first days of life. And it was really difficult at the time to find newborn photographer because it was super new in Norway. And I thought I can try to do it myself. So I kind of bought the camera, I bought all the props, and I was all over YouTube for all the free tutorials, all information I could find, how to do it.
Right.
And that was the first time I tried it, and it worked out really, really well. Because after I posted the picture of him, I got a call 3 months later from my first customer, and I was pretty much in shock because she wanted to pay, and I, I'm super new. So I think I got pretty lucky because I was basically practicing on the shoots and getting paid for that. So I started as a newborn photographer, but I kind of knew that it's just a start point for me. I knew that I will want to move on lately to something else, like another genre.
Did you have a creative background before that, though? Were you interested in like art or design or anything before you actually picked up the camera?
Definitely arts. I used to go to art school when I was a child for 5 years, around 5 years. And I picked up a lot of stuff there. So passion for arts always was there from the beginning. And I think it was kind of logical that I ended up in photography.
Because you have something of a painterly style. It's almost reminiscent of kind of like 16th, 17th, 18th century paintings, where it's very pastel. It's like soft, but really well structured. Where did you find your inspiration kind of to develop your style? What inspired you to get to the point that you are now in terms of the look of your images?
To be honest, I didn't know myself a long time that while I'm developing my style, that's the direction it takes. Because I first started in retouching, so I could do the retouching before I picked the camera, and that was basically just for myself, for my fun, instead of painting or drawing, And I must be honest, I wasn't good at that, So yeah, so I was always very picky on details, and especially, transitions between highlights and shadows, also skin tones. And I think that that's a very important point in retouching to make it to look this way, painterly like. And lighting was difficult for quite a long time. I wasn't feeling confident, and that's until I found Felix Kunz.
Right.
So everything I'm using now in my lighting is a mix of tips and tricks that I learned from him. And if it feels now that I can finally be confident about it, like my retouching style and lighting are coherent and they support each other. So, so I feel like it has really helped to go through everything that Felix taught.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of mixed it all and developed my own.
Something that stands out with your work, and it's not often you see it, but it's a phrase that comes up quite often, which is fine art photography. And I don't know, obviously, about Norway or Scandinavia in general. In England, art is a really subjective term. If you've ever listened to English music, I think music's a fairly subjective term, to be honest. But art is a very subjective term in the sense that lots of people have different ideas of what art is. So for yourself, how would you describe what a fine art photograph is?
Okay, it's a tricky question. For me, fine art photography is a lot about whole process, starting from actually getting the creative idea to execution and post-production choices. It's all together. It's not just one specific thing. And I think that it's a big difference between just picking up your camera, setting the light, and taking pictures, and then or envision it in your head first,
right,
and make a plan. It's a big difference, I think. And I also think that it doesn't have to look like a typical portrait where everything is focused on a person. It doesn't have to be like a particular connection between subject and the viewer. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't need to be an explicit emotion. I once been judged for one of the artwork that I did that my subject didn't have an emotion, but I strongly disagree, because to me, the idea is not about specific emotions. It's about the idea, right?
Right.
So it doesn't need to be present, because the subject can represent a particular state or be just a component of the idea. So it's not the opposite. It's kind of the idea comes first.
Well, something that I feel like with art that's being lost, and I'm kind of torn between the reason that this is changing, but it feels like, and I think what you're describing might be this, that so much art now, so much modern art is defined and uninterpretable. You're told what it is. There's a clear meaning. It's literally spelled out for you. Like you said about the emotion, there's no clear emotion. Well, sometimes it's for the person that's seeing the piece to interpret what emotion they want from it. So do you feel like maybe it's the case that fine art photography is something that leaves room for the interpretation of the viewer to make up some of the meaning?
I think that's exactly the point. And I think that if you're only looking for emotion, then you don't get the idea.
Right.
Because the only connection that really matters is the connection to its creator. To me, it's really about details and that nothing is left without a purpose. And it doesn't need to be a subject. But if you don't have a purpose for a specific object, for example, to be in your frame, then you don't place it there. That's it. So, and a subject, as mentioned before, it can just represent the idea or a specific state. It can be just in a picture just to make it look more alive, but it may not be a point of the whole picture.
Do you think that the problem might be in that? I think this is something that's really common with photography, that people who are photographers spend a lot of time judging other photographers, and maybe too much emphasis or too much importance is given to the opinion of other photographers, when actually most photos aren't taken for the opinion of other photographers. For example, if you take a portrait of a client, that portrait could be for the client, and therefore the input of that client is actually way more important than the input of someone who's focused on, the technical aspects or how they would photograph it differently.
I'm not quite agree. I think it's the opposite. I think that way too many photographers are focusing on what other photographers think is good or is right. So therefore, they are kind of developing their style, maybe I think even subconsciously, already guided. So then it's not, I don't know, it loses this personality, like your own personality in your work.
Mm-hmm.
And only when you shut down yourself from social medias, from people in general, and you just focus on yourself, is when you start to realize what you think is important to show in your portraits, on what is not. Because technical part is, I think it's kind of easy. You've learned it and you're good to go. But then the most important is what's inside it, like kind of soul of the image. And it's a connection that comes first through you and then into photograph and then out in the world and the viewers. Then it's, their thing to either appreciate it or not, understand it or not.
Let's talk about subjects. Let's talk about what it's like to photograph people. And actually something that I always find to be quite fascinating with people that do photograph people, because obviously quite a lot of people shy away from photographing people. They find it intimidating or scary. When it comes to photographing people, what is the ideal subject for you? What makes the shoot go smoothly for you that the subject can do for you?
I think that people who can transition from one emotion to another emotion easily, who could be flexible to that would be the easiest one. But it's rarely you have them, actually. Those would be actors, I think, as perfect subjects. But you normally work with customers, or I normally work with customers, and I don't have that. So what I do is that I guide them through the whole shoot, especially posing, and I make them focus on each detail, where to place their hands, how to sit, where to place their legs, where to look, and I explain always why. So I kind of stuff their head with all this information they have to focus on. So that, I think, levels down their stress. And stress is the first factor that stands on the way. Mm-hmm. And you kind of need to get rid of it. And I hear that a lot of photographers say that you just need to have a connection with a person, but I don't think it always works, because sometimes you're not there to make friends. You just really need to execute your work well, right? And so I think that in order to get the best or the most of your clients or your subject, your models, they need to understand what do you want from them? And it is your job to explain. And it is your job to guide. So the more you know yourself, the better. And if I have a perfect picture, I will show. I normally do not show. I don't like to show unedited pictures, on the back of my camera. I just don't. But if I have a very shy customer, for example, I will find the perfect picture to show just to boost their confidence and explain why I think it's really beautiful this way. And very often it relaxes them, and very often they start to really try more.
To your point a second ago, do you think that some photographers are more concerned with being liked by their subject than they are getting the best possible picture?
I think it might be that. I think so.
And when it comes to yourself, obviously it takes a lot of confidence to be sure of yourself, to pose someone, to be, especially if you're going to be particular with posing. Quite often people are very loose with their terminology. They'll say that, it's literally like turn in this direction, and then they'll give an emotion. And that's pretty much the limit of a lot of people's direction. To be as particular as you say you are, how long did it take you to build up that confidence in your skills at posing people to feel that you could do that with your clients?
I think that the faster you start with yourself, trying it on yourself, the faster you get it with customers. You kind of really have to know on your own what you're doing and why. And the more you prepare ahead from top to toe, which sets you're going to have, how do you want to pose your client, the smoother it will go.
Something that's on your website, something that is very, very evident with the work that you do, is the importance of a team, of it being a collaboration between everyone that's involved on the shoot. Everyone needs to be pulling in the same direction. How long did it take you to build up a team, and how important is it to have the right people around you?
It took some time, definitely. To me, it's so important to know that I can rely on my team members. If one of my dedicated people can't participate, for example, I will rather postpone the whole shoot instead of trying to find a replacement. Because I really do not want to stress about someone else's work on top of my own,
Yeah.
So I think it's good in the beginning to try different, to work with, collaborate with different artists, like makeup artists, for example, hair artists, and see if you like it or not. I think also it's very important to consider the personality, because it might be that you just don't click together and it won't work.
How did you know, with the team that you've got, the people that you trust now, what was it that told you that you had the right people?
There is specifically one person I work 95% of all my shoots with. She's very particular in details like me. She would rather spend an extra hour on making it perfect than just to finish it up as fast as possible and start the shoot. And I'd prefer that.
So it's that attention to detail,
Yes.
real attention to detail that told you that this is the right person. Because obviously one thing that a lot of people, and I think I've never thought about it the way that you brought it up earlier, but I really do, now that you've said it, I do think a lot of people do focus on being liked or being popular or being preferable to the people that are around them, rather than necessarily focusing on the result. So with the people that you have in your team, and I do apologize for kind of sticking to this point, but if it was the case that the results were fantastic, but you weren't maybe as compatible as people, you didn't get on, you weren't friendly with each other. It wasn't bad, but you just weren't friendly with each other. would you continue with those people as your team? Would they still be as important to you?
50-50. Only if I know that no one else can deliver as good as that person, and I would leave it to very few particular shoots. Like I would limit to be with this person. Definitely, I'd be nervous about it. I must say, because if a person is stressing you out in some way on your shoot, you can't be 100% yourself.
Right.
You might just lose your focus on things that you should, and it will show on your work for sure.
When it comes to actually shooting, you're on, you're either working with a client or personal work. Just anytime you have a camera, what do you find is the most enjoyable part about the actual shoot for you?
The actual shoot. Okay. Seeing seeing the result on the back of my camera, that I'm happy with that. I'm not so very sociable, I must admit. So I'm super focused on results, like from the beginning and in the end. I'm very polite and friendly with everyone I'm working with, and models and customers. So I normally don't have problems there, but I never forget why I'm there. And yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think there are two types of photographers, really. There are photographers that are they enjoy the shoot, and there are photographers that want the shot. And I think a lot of people fall into the first category, where they just enjoy the time they spend holding the camera, using the camera, interacting with people with the camera. And then there are people, and I think this is where probably me and you are very similar. Most of the time, the time spent shooting is entirely just there because I want the result. And like you said, the result is the most important factor. Do you actually, I mean, I'm not trying to put you in a corner here, but do you actually enjoy the shoot as it is? Or is it something that you find it takes a very long time for you to get to what you want to get to, because you have to go through all of those kind of surplus stages of being sociable?
Yeah, it's the last thing you said. Oh my goodness. Yes, I feel it can be tricky communicating with people sometimes. So yeah, I just really purely focus on the result. I'm there for the shot. And if I'm not getting it, I don't care about how well I'm connected to the person.
It's funny. I shoot weddings with my wife, and I'm so focused on getting the photos, to be honest with you, that I want, even though it's their wedding. I have a style. I start to see things working out and things developing and how I want things to go, that my wife has to actually explain how weird I am to the people that I'm photographing, so they understand that I'm not a bad person. I'm just very, very focused on, getting the shot, as opposed to coming across as being lovely. With yourself, because your work is to me like something that you would want to hang on the wall, which is not common with photographers at all. A lot of photos are very important to the photographer or very important to the subject, but outside of those parameters, not many people could particularly care. In your case, you have something that I could see hanging on a lot of different walls. Do you prefer the shooting or the retouching with your style? Which is more enjoyable?
Definitely retouching.
Really?
Yeah. The retouching, because I don't know. That's how I started, and I have this routine. Every morning I wake up. The first thing I do is that I just take my cup of coffee and I sit in front of my desktop and I start retouching something. if I don't have this routine, my day is basically destroyed.
Okay, so you really like retouching.
But I actually, when I started to do my own projects, like fine art projects, I think it would be fair to add the creation of the idea, like a process of it, together to comparison, like shooting and retouching, because it's a really big part, and sometimes it takes days, and sometimes it takes months, and sometimes it takes years. Like I have some projects that are in my mind and I'm still working them for a couple of years, and it's a process, and I really enjoy that process. And I think that if I could compare the three of them together, I would go for the process, like creation of the idea.
Right. Do you think it's important for you to have those projects that span long periods of time to keep you inspired, and also to sort of drive the style of work that you're doing, to give you that style?
I kind of had professional crisis not so long ago, when I felt I can't work just for customers, or like doing the same job all over again, same genre and everything. And it was almost painful to sit and start retouching yet another order, or another, even something I did in collaboration with someone else, but it's just like seems to be same. So that's how the idea came, with creating my own personal projects that have nothing to do with everything I've ever done before.
Something that you talk about on your website is sort of, I forget the exact way that you put it, but was the empowerment of women, the instilling confidence in women, building women up, taking photographs that have that effect on your female clients.
Yeah.
When it comes to, and I don't know about Norway or Scandinavia, or to be honest with you, I don't really know about anywhere. I feel like I haven't left this room that I'm in for about 12 months now. But when it comes to empowering women and retouching has gone through a bit of an ethics dilemma in America, and I think in England as well, with regards to sort of very, very hyper retouched images being seen as damaging for, I suppose, especially younger women. How do you find that balance of what you can and can't retouch that still enables that client or that subject to feel beautiful without it feeling superficial?
Yeah. So to be honest, I think, of course, that women are beautiful with whichever issues they think they have, right? But we also are victims of social media and fashion world dictating like what is the beauty standard. And so I see it at my studio all the time. Women coming to my studio are pretty much aware of their issues, what they want to be removed and how much. So if it's a client shoot, I will do whatever she asks me to. Of course, I will never drive it to the point where you can't recognize her. She still looks herself, but maybe with less wrinkles and maybe a little bit thinner, because especially with pregnant women, it's extremely important. They're so hypersensitive that their body goes through all of these changes, and they do not feel like themselves anymore. So if they know you can correct some issues that they think they have, then it's gonna boost their confidence. It's like when they're going to see the final image, then it's not what they're going to see in them, not the wrinkles, for example. What they're gonna see is what, like, everything else, which is beautiful about them. So to me, it's very important to just listen to them. When I do the shoot with a model, for example, I'd listen, but its decision is up to me, and I would not want to retouch too much,
Right?
but or remove things, but. I can sometimes forget myself when I'm retouching skin, and it happens. It's like meditation.
Well, especially if you enjoy retouching as much as you do, it's something you could probably get lost in quite easily.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to pull it down, actually more and more with time, retouch less, just retouch less, but make it look beautiful. It's just this balance that is quite difficult to find in between natural and painterly style, I guess, in retouching. And that's yet another thing, is that when you do the painterly style, sometimes you do have to do exactly that, is to paint just on super low opacity. You paint those shadows, you paint those highlights, right? I pretty much do that, yeah.
Well, you mentioned confidence boosting there, boosting the confidence of your subjects, the model, the person that's hired you to take their portrait. But for yourself, I mean, you sound like someone that has a wonderful sense of self-confidence, which, as someone that doesn't, that's, it's a characteristic I'm always fascinated by, and I'm always very jealous of. I wish I could be more confident in what I do. But what gives you the biggest confidence boost with regard to your work? Is it feedback from, like we mentioned earlier, like a lot of people sort of focus on other photographers? Is it general public feedback? Is it feedback from the client? Is it, I noticed that you have some awards. What's the real thing that boosts your confidence and makes you feel like you're headed in the right direction?
I think all together, but especially feedback from customers, if it's a customer work that I do, because I often hear from them, "Oh, that's the best image I've ever had of myself," and that's amazing. That's really amazing to know that. And then they come back and again, year after year, and it kind of makes you feel that you probably do something right. Also with awards, of course, I sometimes actually do send a normal, like, client job for that. Yeah, and they get so extremely excited to know that I actually got something for the work that was made for them. It's amazing. And feedback from other photographers. Sometimes I'm surprised, I must say. I'm like really surprised. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they're praising me so much, because I don't see my own work the way I think others do. So it's very pleasant, but sometimes I just, I don't know, maybe it's also because I think I'm still not there where I want to see myself. Mm-hmm. I'm still seeing flaws in my work, and I'm looking to master it. So but it's awesome to get so much positive feedback from everyone. It's really building your confidence, that's for sure. But I think it comes with time and experience, pretty much. When you stop, when you stop searching for different genres, trying all the stuff in the world, all the lights, you think you need everything, and you kind of focus more on something that you think suits you the best, is when you stop really worrying about technical part and be more creative. And when you do that, then I think automatically your level rises, at your work, and people can see it.
I mean, you mentioned there not being satisfied, I guess, with the I'm speaking for you here, which is completely unfair, but that never being satisfied with where you are, always wanting to take your work up to the next level, always wanting to improve. I actually personally feel like photographers that are way too happy with where they are now are probably done with growing as artists. I think they're probably done with, like, what you're seeing is all you're ever going to get from them. Because if anyone's, I don't trust anyone that works as a creative that isn't in some way upset with the way that their work is going and always wishing it could be better. It's a very hard thing to go through, because no matter how good you get at something and no matter how much improvement you could see from the start, you always are just focused on like a constantly disappearing finish line. You're always just trying to get better. Do you have like hobbies or things outside of photography that are good at taking away that pressure? Do you have outside interests away from photography?
No.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm that weird. No, I found for myself a new way to inspire myself, and it actually comes with the projects that are ahead. I kind of realized that maybe, or at least I think this way, that maybe we shouldn't search so much for inspiration outside, going on Pinterest, and it's good to be inspired. It's really nice, but I think especially when it comes to our fine art photography, when you want to create a piece that is unique, I think you really have to dig inside yourself, and sometimes. Now I'm going to be really personal, but I also find it very therapeutical. Most of us, we've gone through different stuff in our lives, right? At a certain point, we all get affected by it. And I think that maybe art is a way to express all of that, and maybe it's not all positive. Maybe, I'm just thinking about, for example, this film director, Luc Besson. He has, he had when he was a child, he had a tragedy happened to his mother. She was killed. So all his movies, everything he creates, there's always the female that is strong, and she's a superwoman, and she's a hit woman. She's, so it's like it's a thing for him. But I think it has, so I think that kind of his perhaps trauma, it's my personal opinion, has really influenced it,
Yeah.
And he's amazing at it, right? So I'm now at this stage when I'm trying to find my own Luc Besson in me.
Right. So I've spoken to people from Australia, America, Canada, South Africa. I actually can't remember all of the different places. This is the 147th episode of the podcast, and I've been fortunate enough to speak to people just about everywhere in the world except for Antarctica, and for some reason I can't find anybody in South America that's willing to help me complete the set. Something that I'm always interested in, especially when it comes to people that photograph people, is does your nationality or the culture that you're surrounded by influence the style of photography and what that style is? And before we did this, because obviously there's a little bit of a language barrier, you asked me to send over a list of questions, but I didn't want to send you this one because I didn't want to give you too much chance to think of an answer. I wanted it to be very instinctive. So when it comes to Norway, and I get the impression that a lot of people in Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark get really pissed off or angry with hearing the term Scandinavian, because it kind of just groups all those countries together without giving them their individual identity. And I know that there's some pretty big differences between Norway and Finland and Denmark and Sweden. But does Norway have a style or a character to the portraits that are taken specifically in Norway? Is there like a historical style to Norwegian portraiture?
Yeah, I know the answer. I've actually been asked many times, and firstly, I'm not born in Norway, so I'm originally from Moldova, which was ex-USSR country. So I feel like still Norway has influenced me a lot, or Scandinavia in general, and have influenced my style, definitely. However, my style is not a typical Scandinavian style either. I mean, just seeing the work of my co-workers, I know that we have some similarities, but we do go apart in many ways as well. But I think what I did pick up from Scandinavia is being as minimalistic as possible, and I really like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can especially see it in like Danish design, for example. They are very minimalistic, and I really like that part. So I decided that I'm going to introduce it in my photography. And every time I'm creating something, I'm trying to have as little as possible, so that it's, if I have to mix up things together with the subject, I will try to make them all those things in a very similar tone, or all the same tone, so that even though they are it's kind of busy, it is still it still looks quite minimalistic because of the color choice.
Right.
So so bright colors, like a mix of bright colors, is not my thing, because to me it's just too busy. It's too, I don't know, it's kind of chaotic to the eye. Yeah. I look for calmness in many ways, visually.
Well, I'm quite excited just by the fact that you not originally being from Norway means I get to tick 2 countries off of my list of places that I've managed to interview around the world. So you're doing double duty in that sense. I'm an enormous fan of your work. I think it's absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
I want as many people as possible to find your work. So where's the best place for people to go to find the work that you do, your website, your Instagram, and so on?
I guess Instagram. I'm also on other platforms, but I think I show my work on Instagram, and it's Irina.Jomir. I think it's if spelling it's IRINA and then dot JOMIR, Irina.Jomir. And there you find me.
It's been amazing to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure.